Anytime a new weapon reaches the battlefield, a counter to it will undoubtedly appear in response. Whether it be modern examples like the various responses to drone warfare, or more ancient examples such as long spears to counter cavalry, a counter is inevitable, and the introduction of tanks was no different. Almost as quickly as they appeared, methods for destroying them began to be created, whether they involved using existing weaponry such as field guns or new ones like the Tankgewehr, the world's first anti-tank rifle. With the ever-increasing motorization of modern armies during the 20th century, though, it was inevitable that vehicles with the sole purpose of destroying enemy tanks would appear as well. Unfortunately, nailing down who exactly built the first tank destroyer is not quite as easy as who built the first tank, although even that topic could be argued if you tried hard enough. If you go purely by the absolute definition of the term, the answer would be the aforementioned Germans, who almost immediately began forming anti-tank units equipped with weapons that were already in service, like field guns or K-bullets, eventually building on those to create more effective weapons. However, the term tank destroyer is more commonly associated with a vehicle primarily intended for use against tanks. You could argue vehicles like the British gun carrier Mark I, built in 1917, would fit this definition, as it could certainly be used as one. Vehicles like the French Saint-Chamond also fit the common casemate design associated with tank destroyers. These were not intended or employed primarily as tank destroyers though, thus, once again, are not the answer. In reality, the Allied powers didn't have much interest at the time in dedicated anti-tank weaponry. An official British document from 1918 on anti-tank defense, which was also used by the United States, specifies that it is not considered either practicable or necessary at any rate for the present to introduce any special anti-tank gun. Our existing artillery resources are regarded as being fully adequate for dealing with tanks. So with the Allies focusing on utilizing existing weapons and building new tank designs, who would have an interest in dedicated anti-tank systems? Given their experiences against tanks during World War I, it should be unsurprising that it would indeed be the Germans who created the first true tank destroyer. Contrary to what you may have heard, the first vehicle to receive the tank destroyer designation predates the rise of the Nazi Party by some time, with it appearing in 1927 following discussions in late 1926. The intention was to create a fast-moving, low-profile vehicle to take advantage of the slow nature of tanks at the time. This ruled out towed anti-tank guns, and interestingly has some similarities to the later US tank destroyer doctrine adopted during the Second World War for vehicles like the Hellcat we have discussed previously. The first tank destroyer built by the Germans would be this, a modified commercial Hanomag tractor fitted with a 3.7cm Tankabwehrkanone or TAK. Other proposals were also made, such as a 7.5cm arm design suggested by Krupp, but would not be produced. The tractor-based designs would similarly be rejected after being deemed too slow and too tall. Development of this concept would continue in the following years, and after the Nazi Party rose to power with a variety of half-track designs. Many of these would not proceed past the prototype stage though, or would not see a production example until after World War II had begun. Limited production of a heavy half-track armed with the 8.8cm Flak 18 for use against ground targets would be produced in 1938, but once again, these were self-propelled guns rather than tank destroyers. By now, you're likely beginning to understand what makes it so hard to determine what is a true tank destroyer. Just about any self-propelled gun can be used as a tank destroyer, however, not all self-propelled guns are tank destroyers. As discussed in my recent video on the German Waffenträger, this makes using the designation given to the vehicle by the nation it was in service with, or the intended use, the best way to determine what a vehicle is. All of this is to say that although Germany was the first to build a tank destroyer, they were not the first to create a production design. To find that vehicle, we don't have to travel far, with it being created by one of Germany's neighboring countries, that being Belgium. Development of a vehicle armed with an anti-tank gun would begin as early as 1933, using the Vickers Carden Lloyd Mark VI, purchased in 1930. Just like the Germans in the late 1920s, the Belgians realized that towed guns could not react as quickly as self-propelled guns. The first experiments with this idea would lead to 6 of the armored carriers being fitted with a 47mm cannon. With only a 2-man crew and issues surrounding the mounting and operation of the gun, these would be improved upon with the following design known as the T-13. Once again, using existing Vickers-Carden-Lloyd chassis, the Belgians would fit the FRC 47mm Mod 1932 anti-tank gun, creating the T-13. Due to the nature of the Belgian military at the time, these were intended as defensive vehicles rather than offensive ones. Importantly for this video, both of these designs were to be employed essentially as mobile anti-tank guns, so despite the tank destroyer designation not being specifically used, there is no doubt this was their intended role. An issue of Popular Science from the period even uses the tank destroyer description for the original Mark VIs when towing anti-tank guns, so the same would clearly apply when the gun was directly mounted on the hull. Several variants of this design were built, with the B1 and B2 featuring a similar layout on top of artillery tractors. The B3 would follow these, instead being built atop the Vickers-Carden-Lloyd Light Dragon Mark II. With production of the T-13 beginning in 1935 and around 300 built across all variants, this makes it the first production tank destroyer I can find and one of, if not the first, to see combat. Similar improvised designs would follow this, such as the Panzerjäger 1, which we will cover in my next video. The tank destroyer concept would also spread outside of Germany, with nations quickly realizing the importance of self-propelled anti-tank guns to deal with the rapidly improving tank designs. Even before the war, we see the term pop up in British documents from the mid-30s, along with several prototype designs. Still, other designs were built around the start of World War II using different designations like anti-tank self-propelled gun, which served the same role as those referred to as tank hunters or tank destroyers. While the term itself may be fairly hard to define at times, the evolution of the tank destroyer concept is an intriguing one to me. Many of the ideas shown by these early examples would show up in later designs or within the doctrines of different nations. The role of the tank destroyer has also been filled by different weapons since the creation of the tank itself. As the tank evolved, we clearly see that self-propelled anti-tank systems were on the minds of various engineers, but the focus on tanks which could perform multiple roles on the battlefield took priority. This changed almost instantly following the start of World War II, with nations quickly improvising and adopting dedicated tank destroyers. By the end of the war, infantry anti-tank weapons had advanced enough to signal the beginning of the end for those, but that is a story for another video. If you found any of the designs mentioned in this video interesting, I'll likely cover many of them in longer videos in the future, but I wanted to make a shorter video discussing the early timeline prior to my video on the Panzerjäger 1, which is often referred to as the first tank destroyer, despite that not being the case as we have seen today. Hopefully you found this interesting, and if you'd like to learn more about the progression of the tank destroyer, or why you might want to build one, I'd recommend checking out Chieftain's video titled How to Design a Tank Destroyer, and the other videos linked below on the T-13. I also have quite a few tank destroyer videos on my channel, which you can check out on the playlist on screen now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon.